All right. So we have 4 transformations that we're going to learn about in 8th grade. We're going to learn about translations, reflections, rotations, and dilations. This video is about reflections. And a reflection is when I take a shape and I flip it over one of the axes. Just like when I look in the mirror, you guys may not realize it, but what you see in the mirror is, so like what you see when you look at yourself in the mirror is not exactly what I see when I look at you, because you're seeing a reflection of yourself. Just like when I look at my hands, like if I put them together, they line up. But when I put them next to each other, notice my thumbs aren't in the same place. I'm seeing a reflection. My hands are a reflection of each other. And in this case, my hands are reflected across the y-axis. If I were looking at them like this, they'd be reflected across the x-axis. So in 8th grade, we only reflect over the x or the y-axis. We don't have to worry about any other reflections in 8th grade, just x or y. Now, when you get to high school, like I want to say when you get to maybe Algebra 2, you're going to start reflecting over other things, and it might be in geometry, but I'm not positive. But you are eventually going to reflect over things that are not x and y. But for now, x and y is all we need to worry about. Okay? So when we look at a reflection, we're going to see some things. So you might see something like this, where they give you a shape and they ask you to reflect it. So they might give you 2 shapes. So maybe like this right here. They might give you 2 shapes and say, which reflection did you use? Did I flip this way? So this looks like it's flipping over the x. Likewise, I'm just going to turn this because I don't actually think here. Okay? They might have it reflecting over the y. Okay? So it's either going to reflect over one of these 2 axes. But what you are responsible for is you're responsible for being able to go from you're expected to being able to understand a rule, to being able to understand a picture, and being able to describe in words what's happening. Okay? So they might give you a point and ask you to be able to look at that point and say, okay, what's happening? Which one of these, how are you reflecting based on the point? They might give you a picture and ask you, what's the rule? They might give you a rule and ask you to describe it verbally. They might give you a picture and ask you to describe it verbally. So they're going to ask you to be able to go between these different representations. So let's talk about what we're going to see. So when I see a reflection, so let's say I have a point and it's being reflected. If I see the x has stayed the same, then I'm going to highlight the x. I'm going to highlight the x-axis. I'm going to highlight the x in any coordinates they give me. And those things are going to stay the same. Okay? So when I write my new ones, they're going to stay the same. But what's going to change is the y. It's going to reflect, meaning just like my hands, if I want them to be oriented the same, I have to flip them. If I want my y, if I want to reflect over the y, I've got to flip it. Okay? Same with the y. If the y is the same, I'm going to highlight the y-axis, any y's I see, and they're going to stay like they are. So what does this mean? All right. So let's look at some examples. All right. So here's the first example we're going to look at. I'm going to do the whole thing, but you're not necessarily going to have to. The tools that I think are the best tools for this are a pencil or pen, so a writing utensil, and then a highlighter. You know I'm a huge fan of the highlighter. Nothing about this has changed, okay? So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the description they're giving me, okay? They're telling me something happened. So they're saying it's reflected over the y-axis. So I'm going to look at the y-axis and I'm going to see, I'm going to highlight the y-axis. I highlighted reflected over the axis. I'm going to highlight the y-axis. And now any points that they give me, and I'll just write these down real quick. I have Q, R, S, T, and that's 1, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 2, 5. Okay? So when I see them reflecting over the y-axis, I'm going to highlight that rule. I'm going to highlight the y-axis. I'm going to highlight the y in anywhere I see it. These are all y values. And in my new rule, I'm going to highlight that too, because those things are going to stay exactly the same. So I'm literally going to copy exactly what I see there. So I see a 4, a 2, a 4, and a 5. I see a y. Everything else I'm going to flip. And that doesn't mean I turn it negative. That means if it's negative, it turns positive. If it's positive, it turns negative. Its sign flips. So this is positive, it turns negative. That's positive, it turns negative. Positive, turns negative, positive, turns negative. This x here is positive, it turns negative. So now, because I translated the words reflect over the y-axis, I can see that my new shape, which is going to be like, so say this is Q, this is going to be Q prime, okay? Q prime is my new shape, and I'm reflecting over the y-axis, so my new shape should wind up over there if I did it right. My new points are negative 1, 4, that's my Q prime. Negative 2, 2 is my R prime. Negative 3, 4 is my S prime, and negative 2, 5 is my T prime. And as you can see, now this one doesn't really look like a reflection. So I had some people in class like, how can I tell it's a reflection? It looks like the same shape. Well, again, remember my thumbs. My thumbs are reflecting. Are they in the same place? No. Are these Q's is the Q in the same place on the other shape? No. So this is a reflection. All right? So that's the first kind of reflection. This is a reflection over the Y. All right, the next kind of reflection we might see is a reflection over the X. I'm going to write these ordered pairs down real quick. Q, R, S, T, negative 4, 1, negative 2, 1, negative 1, 3, negative 5, 3. Okay? So now, again, I start by looking at what they're asking me to do. They want me to reflect over the x-axis. So I highlight that. I highlight the x-axis. I highlight my x values. I highlight the x here, and I highlight this space where the x is in my rule. And then I just copy everything that well, obviously I can't copy the x-axis, but I copy these numbers, negative 4, negative 2, negative 1, negative 5. I put a x here because, again, I'm not changing the sign. Just because this is positive, that doesn't mean anything. It means this stays exactly the same, okay? Now, anything else I'm going to flip. This flips, 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 flips. This y flips. So my rule is xy, and that 7 should be an arrow. So the rule is actually x comma y turns into x comma negative y, okay? Okay, so now what if they tell me, what if they give me a rule? I mean, like, what if they give me a rule? What about this? What about this problem? They didn't even give me any words, right? So, like, what am I going to do with this? There's no words at all even, okay? Well, for that then, I don't even need to do anything with the shape. I'm literally just going to write these points down. A, B, C, negative 2, 3, 8, 10, negative 4, negative 8. It says reflected across the x-axis. So that means I'm looking at x values, x values, x values. Anything that I've highlighted, I'm just going to copy. So negative 2, 8, and negative 4. And then I copy this x. Anything that I didn't highlight, I flip. So this becomes negative 3. This becomes negative 10, and this negative 8 becomes positive 8, because remember, I'm just flipping it. I'm not changing it to negative, I'm changing its sign. This y becomes negative y. All right? That is how we do translations. I'm going to pause it for a second. I'm going to give you an example of what some questions. Okay, so here's some examples of some multiple choice type questions, and there's other types on this worksheet, but let's look at this. That one's crazy looking. Let's start with this one. Okay, so for this question, it says a trapezoid is reflected over the x-axis. What is the rule for this transformation? Okay, so it says over the x-axis. That's my x-axis. So I'm going to highlight the x's in these, and then I'm going to look at the first part of the coordinate and see what's happening. Whatever I highlighted, it should be the exact same as what I had before, right? Well, is 2x the same thing as x? No. Is negative y the same as x? No. Is x the same as x? Yeah. Is x plus 2 the same as x? No. Okay? So again, I'm looking for what stays the same. All right? So that's one type of problem that we might see. All right? What about this one here? Okay, this guy here. It says rectangle JKLM is reflected across the y-axis to create rectangle JKLM prime. So this is the weird one, so that's the one I'm going to point at. All right? So I'm going from L to L prime. Just rewrite that where you can see it. L to L prime. Well, L, what is ordered pair L? It's right here. It's 5, 4. Okay? So I'm going across the y-axis. So which one's going to change? Which one's going to stay the same? Y. So my 4 should stay the same, and my 5 should flip. Well, which one has that coordinate? This guy right here. Okay? Now, this one I wanted to show you because it's crazy looking, right? Like, what is this? This is insane. But it's actually pretty easy to figure out what's happening, okay? So it says a triangle is reflected over the y-axis. And honestly, you don't even need the picture. If you remember over here for number 2, I didn't even use the picture. It's almost like the picture was there to confuse me. Like, wouldn't this freak you out? But the picture doesn't even matter, okay? So look, it says it's reflected over the y-axis, right? So I'm going to highlight the y-axis, and then I'm going to highlight the y, which is the second part of each one of these coordinates. Okay? And then we're going to look because it should stay the same. Well, in this one, it stays the same. In this one, it doesn't. In this one, it doesn't. And in that one, it doesn't. So A is my only choice. All right? So that's how reflections work. That's everything I can think of on reflections. If you have any questions, just please feel free to let me know.